Vladimir Putin's journey to the presidency and his long-standing rule over Russia is a tale of political calculation, intelligence service background, and the strategic consolidation of power. Born on October 7, 1952, in Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, Putin grew up in a working-class family. His father was a factory foreman, and his mother was a homemaker. Putin's early life was marked by hardship, particularly the wartime experiences of his parents during the siege of Leningrad, which left a deep impact on his worldview. As a child, he was known for his interest in martial arts, and he developed a disciplined, competitive nature that would later serve him in his political career. Putin's academic path led him to Leningrad State University, where he earned a law degree in 1975. It was during this period that he became interested in intelligence work, particularly the KGB, Committee for State Security, the Soviet Union's secret service. This interest led him to join the KGB right after his graduation. He was recruited into the KGB's Foreign Intelligence Service, and his first major assignment was in East Germany, where he served as a KGB officer under deep cover in the city of Dresden from 1985 to 1990. It was here that Putin witnessed the collapse of the Berlin Wall in 1989, a moment that greatly influenced his later views on Russian sovereignty in the West. The Soviet Union's disintegration in 1991 marked a turning point, as Putin, like many former KGB officers, was uncertain about his future. He returned to Leningrad, St. Petersburg, where he worked for the local government, particularly in foreign relations, helping to establish connections with foreign businesses and governments. In the early 1990s, Putin's rise in St. Petersburg's political circles was facilitated by his relationship with Anatoly Sobchak, the city's liberal mayor, who became a key mentor. Sobchak, who advocated for democratic reforms, brought Putin into the political fold, where he initially worked on economic and foreign policy matters. Putin's time in St. Petersburg was also marked by his cultivation of ties with the emerging business elite, which would later prove crucial in his ascent to power. He worked closely with many businessmen who would later become some of Russia's most influential oligarchs, including those connected to the energy sector. Putin's political journey took a decisive turn in 1996 when he moved to Moscow. With the backing of influential figures in the Russian government and security services, Putin quickly rose through the ranks of President Boris Yeltsin's administration. He joined the presidential administration in 1996, and by 1998, he had become the head of the Federal Security Service, FSB, which was the KGB's successor. In 1999, Putin was appointed as Prime Minister of Russia after a series of political crises in the Yeltsin government, marked by instability, corruption, and the ongoing war in Chechnya. His appointment came at a time when Yeltsin's popularity had plummeted, and the country faced widespread political and economic turmoil. When Boris Yeltsin unexpectedly resigned on December 31, 1999, Putin, as the acting president, was thrust into the spotlight. He quickly sought to consolidate power, positioning himself as a strong, decisive leader capable of restoring order and stability to a nation that had experienced a decade of economic collapse, political instability, and the breakdown of central authority. Putin's tough approach to the ongoing conflict in Chechnya, his hardline stance against separatism, and his appeal to nationalism helped him gain popularity among ordinary Russians. His message of stability resonated deeply with a population weary of the chaos of the 1990s. In March 2000, Putin won the presidential election with a commanding 53% of the vote, though his victory was aided by his image as a leader who could bring peace and prosperity. His early presidency was marked by a focus on centralizing power, reforming the economy, and rebuilding Russia's global standing. One of his first major moves was to strengthen the power of the central government, reducing the autonomy of Russia's regional governors. He also worked to bring the country's massive energy resources, particularly oil and gas, under state control, leading to the consolidation of key industries under the state or loyal oligarchs. These economic reforms, combined with a global rise in oil prices, helped fuel significant economic growth throughout the early 2000s, which boosted Putin's approval ratings. Putin's control over Russia's political system deepened as he began to limit the influence of the oligarchs, many of whom had flourished in the chaotic 1990s after the fall of the Soviet Union. Some, like the powerful media mogul Boris Berezovsky and oil magnate Mikhail Khodorkovsky, were targeted through legal and financial means, and in some cases, imprisoned or exiled. This strengthened Putin's grip on power, as he replaced these oligarchs with a new class of businessmen loyal to him. In 2004, Putin won a second term as president, amid rising popular support, though critics pointed to concerns about the erosion of democratic freedoms, media suppression, and the increasing dominance of state power. During this period, Putin began to reassert Russia's influence on the global stage, with a more assertive foreign policy. His government took a harder line on issues like NATO expansion, the US-led invasion of Iraq, and Ukraine's desire to join Western institutions, which Putin saw as a direct challenge to Russia's sphere of influence. In 2008, after serving 2 consecutive terms, Putin was legally prohibited from running for a third term due to the Russian constitution. However, he orchestrated a shift in power by nominating Dmitry Medvedev as president, while Putin assumed the role of prime minister. During Medvedev's presidency, Putin continued to wield significant influence, and in 2012, after a controversial election that sparked protests, Putin returned to the presidency for a third term, amid allegations of election fraud and manipulation. In 2014, Putin's government took a dramatic turn with the annexation of Crimea from Ukraine, which led to international sanctions and a sharp deterioration in relations with the West. This move was justified by Putin as a means of protecting ethnic Russians and Russian speakers in Crimea, but it further consolidated his popularity domestically. He also intervened in Syria, aligning Russia with the regime of Bashar al-Assad and reinforcing Russia's status as a global power capable of challenging US and NATO influence. In 2020, Putin initiated constitutional reforms that allowed him to remain in power until 2036, solidifying his control over Russia's political future. His leadership has been marked by both significant economic recovery and an authoritarian political environment, with widespread corruption, the suppression of opposition, and a crackdown on free speech. Throughout his tenure, Putin has maintained a careful balance between economic growth, domestic stability, and projecting Russian power abroad, making him one of the most powerful and controversial figures in modern Russian history.